The waiting room was quiet except for the soft hum of fluorescent lights, but tension ended the moment he did. A middle-aged black man, walking slowly, one hand pressed against his side, as if holding himself together. His breathing was shallow, each inhale a quiet battle. He refused to dramatize. The nurse at the reception desk barely glanced up, not at his face, not at the pain shadowing his eyes, just at the clipboard in front of her. "Sit anywhere," she said flatly. The words pushed out like she was already tired of him. He tried to speak. "Ma'am, I think something's wrong. It feels—" "I said sit," she repeated, tapping her pen. "We'll call you." And just like that, she dismissed him. His pain, his presence, his urgency, all swept aside in a single breath. What she didn't know was who he really was.
Before we continue, if you're moved by stories where truth rises above prejudice, make sure you subscribe for more powerful Black justice narrations. It helps the channel grow and keeps these stories alive. Like, comment, and share this video so you never miss the next one. Your support helps us keep telling stories that matter. Now back to the story.
He lowered himself into a chair, wincing as a stab of pain cut through him. The nurse didn't notice, but a few other patients did. A mother with a toddler, an elderly man pretending not to watch, even a teenager scrolling his phone who paused long enough to look concerned. But not the nurse. She called 3 patients who walked in after him. She joked with another nurse passing by. She flipped through paperwork as if nothing in the world required her attention more than ink and staples. When she finally glanced his way again, it wasn't to help him. It was to sigh, loudly. "Sir," she said, "I need you to look comfortable. Other patients will think something is wrong." He blinked, confused. "Something is wrong." "Everyone thinks that," she replied, already turning back to her papers. Each word made the room smaller. After 30 minutes, his breathing became uneven, subtle at first, then pronounced. A thin sheen of sweat formed along his brow, and he leaned forward, gripping his seat. He tried to call out, "Ma'am," but she raised a hand. "You're next after I finish this entry. Please don't make a scene." She never said he was exaggerating, never said he was overreacting, but the refusal to see him, it carried those meanings anyway. The mother with the toddler approached the desk. "Excuse me, I think he needs help." The nurse gave a courteous smile, polite on the surface, sharp underneath. "Everyone needs help. We follow the list." "But he looks—" "I have it under control." The nurse snapped softly, the kind of reprimand wrapped in customer service tone. The woman stepped back. The man in pain tried again. "Ma'am, please." She finally stood. "Fine, come with me." But even as she led him toward the hallway, she walked ahead of him, not beside him, not supporting him, not noticing when he stumbled slightly, catching himself with a hand against the wall. Inside the examination room, she motioned to the table without making eye contact. "Sit." He lowered himself slowly. His hand trembled. "So what brings you in?" she asked. Her tone wasn't curious. It wasn't caring. It was procedural and impatient. "A sharp pain," he whispered. "Right side started this morning. It keeps getting worse." "How would you rate it on a scale of 1 to 10? He hesitated. 7, maybe 8. She typed without looking up. Most patients say 8. It's rarely actually that. He inhaled, steady, controlled. "I'm not most patients." She paused just long enough to make the silence feel like judgment. "Any medical history I should know about?" she continued. "Yes," he said softly. 2 years ago She cut him off. "The doctor will handle that part. I'm just getting vitals." She clipped the pulse oximeter onto his finger, so roughly he flinched. "Sorry," she said, though her voice held no apology. His heart rate spiked. The monitor beeped faster. She frowned at the numbers. That's high." "It hurts," he murmured. "Pain does that," she replied, unconcerned. Then, without asking, she pressed on his abdomen. He gasped, gripping the table. "Sir," she said sharply, "relax. I can't assess if you tense." "I'm trying," he panted. She sighed. "Let me get the doctor." try to breathe normally. And without waiting, she stepped out, shutting the door behind her. In the hallway, her voice carried more than she intended. "I have a gentleman complaining of abdominal pain," she told a coworker. "But I honestly think he's being dramatic. His vitals are high, but he's very reactive." The coworker asked something quietly. "No," the nurse said. "I didn't call the supervising clinician. He's booked for orientation today." Someone knew. She laughed lightly. Poor guy picked the wrong day. She walked away. But she didn't know the man in the exam room wasn't seated anymore. He was lying on his side, trying to stay conscious, trying to breathe around the pain, trying not to panic. She didn't know how bad it had become. Not yet. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. Then 20. A quiet knock sounded on the exam room door, but not from a nurse. A soft male voice followed. Calm. Steady. "Sir, may I come in?" The door opened. A man in a white coat stepped inside. Early 40s, glasses, a badge clipped to his pocket. He froze when he saw the patient curl forward, breath shallow. "Why hasn't anyone?" The doctor stopped himself, moved quickly, placed a hand gently on the patient's shoulder. "Sir, can you hear me?" He nodded weakly. "What's your pain level now?" 9, he whispered. "Maybe 10. The doctor pressed the emergency call button. Within seconds, a team arrived. The nurse, however, appeared last, walking in with mild surprise, as if she hadn't expected things to escalate. "What's going on?" she asked. The doctor turned. "Why wasn't I told he was in this condition?" I assessed him," she said defensively. "He said 7. He seemed stable." The doctor looked from her to the patient. "Stable?" She folded her arms. Everyone exaggerates their pain. The doctor's expression hardened, not with anger, but with something colder, disappointment. "Not him," he said quietly. She frowned. "Why are you—" Then the doctor turned fully toward the patient. "Sir," he said gently, "I'm so sorry. I didn't realize our new supervising clinician was already here." The nurse froze. The patient opened his eyes. The doctor continued. "Everyone, this is Dr. Elijah Ward, our incoming director of clinical operations." Silence wrapped the room. The nurse's face drained of color. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't look at her with spite. He simply met her eyes, calm, controlled, pained in more ways than physically. "I tried to tell her," he whispered. The doctor nodded. "You don't need to explain." The nurse's lips parted, but nothing came out, because now she knew exactly who she had dismissed, who she had minimized, who she had ignored. Not a random patient, but the man she would be reporting to, the man responsible for evaluating patient care, the man whose signature would sit above hers on every protocol update. And she had failed him in every way that mattered. What she didn't know was that this moment would redefine her career. The room felt suddenly smaller. Monitors beeped softly. The overhead light hummed. And the only thing truly loud was the silence that followed the doctor's words. Dr. Elijah Ward, new director of clinical operations. The man on the table, gripping his side, breath shallow, eyes clouded with pain, was not just another chart, another bed, another inconvenience on a busy shift. He was the person she would soon be answering to. The nurse swallowed hard. For the first time since he'd walked through the doors, she really saw him, not as an anonymous black man in a waiting room, not as another one with a high pain number, but as a human being and as her superior. "Let's get imaging now," the doctor ordered briskly. "Possible appendicitis or something more complicated. Move." The team sprang into action. The nurse moved too, more out of habit than intention, but the doctor held up a hand. "I'll have Rebecca assist," he said evenly. "You can step out." It was a simple redirection. No raised voice, no public scolding, but it cut deeper than any shout could have. She nodded stiffly and stepped backward, bumping lightly into a cart before catching herself. Her face burned, though no one was looking at her. They were focused on the man whose voice she had chosen not to hear. The doors swung closed behind him as they wheeled Elijah toward imaging. She was left alone in the exam room, standing beside the empty bed, the imprint of his hand still visible in the crumpled sheet where he gripped through the pain. For the first time that shift, she didn't feel rushed. She felt exposed. Hours later, the waiting area had thinned. Night had settled over the hospital, turning the glass front doors into dark mirrors. The nurse, her name was Lauren, sat at the station, staring at the computer screen but not truly seeing it. Every click of her mouse felt heavier. Every glance from a patient felt sharper. Every beep, every footstep, every overhead page reminded her of the moment she'd been gently but unmistakably sidelined. She replayed it in her mind. Everyone exaggerates their pain. Please don't make a scene. He seemed stable. She wished she'd never said any of it, but she had. And somewhere down the hall, the man she dismissed was not only her patient. He was recovering from emergency surgery. The doctor's note had already circulated in the staff group chat. Caught early. Appendix had complications. Good thing we got him in when we did. Good thing. She thought about how close it had come to not happening. How close he had come to being just another file marked arrived late in progression. A gentle voice broke through her thoughts. "Excuse me," someone said. Lauren looked up. It was him. Dr. Elijah Ward stood at the edge of the desk, now in a hospital gown covered by a robe. For pole beside him, moving carefully but upright. His face was pale from anesthesia and pain meds, but his eyes were alert. Her heart climbed into her throat. "Dr. Ward," she managed. You shouldn't be up. You need to rest." He gave a small half-smile. "Believe me, I'm not planning any marathons." She rose from her chair, suddenly acutely aware of how she was standing, how loud her breathing felt, where her hands were. "I'm glad the surgery went well," she said awkwardly. "The team, they did a great job." "They did," he agreed, "especially once they were called." The line landed softly. No accusation in his tone, but no way to miss what he meant. She looked down at her hands. "About earlier." "We'll get to that," he said, not unkindly. "Right now, I actually came for something else." She frowned, confused. "I'm still technically a patient," he said, "but my official role starts tomorrow. There's an orientation meeting for staff in the conference room downstairs. First thing in the morning." "I know," she said quietly. "I'll be talking about a lot of things," he continued. "New protocols, patient safety, communication, response times. But I'll also talk about something more important." "What's that?" she asked, even though she had a sinking feeling she already knew. He held her gaze. "How we see people before we know who they are," he said. Each word made the nurse's chest feel tighter. She pulled in a slow breath. "Dr. Ward, I'm sorry." The words spilled out faster than she could organize them. "I should have listened more carefully. I should have flagged you sooner. I saw the numbers, but I assumed you were. I thought you were stable enough to wait. It was busy and..." He raised a hand. "Busy is a reason," he said gently, "not an excuse." She closed her mouth. He leaned lightly against the counter, one hand on the edge for balance. "I've worked in enough hospitals to know the truth," he continued. "You are overworked, understaffed. You carry more than anyone sees. But the moment you let your exhaustion decide who deserves urgency and who doesn't, people get hurt." She swallowed hard. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't humiliate her. He raised the truth. "I didn't ignore you," she protested weakly. "I took you back. I took your vitals. I brought you to the exam room." "And then left," he said calmly, "for 20 minutes. She flinched. "I thought you were managing," she whispered. "You didn't scream. You were quiet." "Some of us learned long ago not to scream," he replied. "It doesn't always help." The meaning under those words was heavy, not just medical, historical, personal. She felt the weight of it pressed down around them. "I'm not calling you a bad nurse," he added, "but I am saying this. What you did to me today, I promise you I am not the first." Her eyes burned. "I know, and I refuse to let it keep happening under my supervision." That line wasn't a threat. It was a boundary. For him. For her. For every patient whose pain had ever been filtered through someone else's assumptions. She nodded slowly. What happens now? Now, he said, pushing gently away from the counter, I go back to bed. Despite everything, she almost smiled. And tomorrow, he continued, you come to orientation. You sit in the second row. You take notes. And when I talk about what happened to me today, he paused, choosing his words carefully. You listen with the part of you that still remembers why you became a nurse in the first place. Her throat tightened. You're going to tell everyone? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm going to tell the truth, he said. Not to shame you, to protect the next Elijah who walks through those doors without a title attached to his name. He shifted his grip on the four-pole. And Lauren, he added quietly. She looked up, surprised to hear her name. Yes. Tomorrow, he said, I'm going to ask for a volunteer to help lead a new patient listening initiative. Someone who's willing to change. I hope it's you. She stared at him, stunned. You'd trust me with that? After? I wouldn't trust the version of you from this morning, he said. But the version standing in front of me now, the one who's humbled, uncomfortable, and clearly thinking, I trust her more than someone who thinks they never make mistakes. Her eyes blurred. He gave her a small nod and turned to go. Dr. Ward, she called softly. He paused. I'm truly sorry, she said, eyes shining. Not because of who you are. Not because you're my supervisor. Because of what I did. He held her gaze for one long, measured moment. Good, he said. That's where real change starts. Then he walked away, slowly, down the corridor, his hospital gown brushing against the polished floor, the four wheels clicking, a reminder that even those in power bleed, hurt, and need care like everyone else. The next morning, the conference room was fuller than it had been in months. Nurses, doctors, techs, reception staff, and administrators filled the chairs. The air buzzed with the usual pre-meeting murmur, complaints about schedules, jokes about coffee, whispered guesses about the new policies everyone feared were coming. Lauren sat in the second row. As instructed, hands clasped around a pen that had not yet touched paper. She saw Elijah enter, not as a patient this time, but as a leader. He wore a crisp shirt, slacks, and a hospital badge that now read, Dr. Elijah Ward, Director of Clinical Operations. He moved with calm purpose, a slight stiffness in his side, the only visible reminder of the previous night. When he stepped in front of the room, the chatter faded. Good morning, he began. His voice was steady, not loud, but it carried. I'm not going to start today with charts or metrics, he said, or bed counts or wait times or insurance forms. A light ripple of relief moved through the room. I'm going to start, he continued, with a story. Lauren's fingers tightened around the pen. Last night, Elijah said, a patient came into this hospital with escalating abdominal pain. He checked in, reported his symptoms, and was told to sit. He waited and waited and watched others go ahead of him. Eventually, he was taken to a room. His vitals were concerning. His pain was high, but he was left alone. For too long. The room was very still. That patient, he said quietly, was me. A low, shocked murmur swept across the rows. Lauren exhaled shakily. I am not telling you this, he continued, because I want an apology. I already received one from the person involved. I accepted it. I am telling you this because what happened to me is happening to people who do not have titles, who do not have badges, who do not have the leverage to make a room full of professionals listen. He let that sink in. You all know the research on disparities in healthcare outcomes, he said. You know the statistics. Pain is believed less often. Symptoms are dismissed more quickly. Response times change based on who's in the bed. He didn't need to say which who. They all knew. He scanned the room. But I'm less interested in what's written in the studies, he said, and more interested in what's written in your day-to-day choices. He paused. What you sigh at, who you roll your eyes about, who you believe when they say something is wrong, who you assume is exaggerating. Each example was a small mirror. Lauren felt every one of them. He never mentioned her name. He never pointed toward her. He never exposed her. He exposed the pattern instead. I'm going to implement some changes, he said. Yes, we'll have new escalation flags for pain reports. We'll adjust triage scripts. We'll add a second check before patients are left alone in exam rooms with concerning vitals. He took a slow breath. But policies can't fix what perception distorts, he added. Only you can. The room was silent. We don't get to choose who walks through those doors, he said. We don't get to choose how they look, how they speak, how calm or emotional they are. We only get to choose one thing, whether we treat their pain as real. He looked out over the audience. The next time someone tells you they're hurting, he said, his voice soft and now, I want you to remember that you might be the only line between them and a very different outcome. And you will never know in that moment whether they are a stranger or your future supervisor or someone's entire world. He let the silence hold. Treat them like they're all those things, he finished. Every time. He stepped back, letting the weight of that hang in the air. Then he smiled faintly. Now, he said, I need a volunteer, someone willing to help lead a new initiative on patient listening and bias awareness. It will be uncomfortable. It will be an extra responsibility. It will require honesty. And it will matter. He waited. For a moment, no one moved. Then a chair scraped softly. Lauren stood. Her legs shook, but her voice didn't. I'll do it, she said. Dozens of heads turned toward her. Elijah met her gaze. Thank you, Lauren, he said simply. He didn't call attention to why it meant more coming from her. He didn't retell the story. He didn't ask for public self-criticism. He just gave her a chance to turn harm into help. A nurse beside her whispered, You sure you want that? Lauren nodded. I need it, she said quietly. Weeks later, the changes were visible. A new sign hung behind the reception desk. Your pain is real. We are listening. Not just words. Practices had shifted too. Triage questions were asked with more intention. Nurses double-checked vitals, even when someone looked fine. Doctors made more time to listen before deciding. And Lauren? She listened differently. To tone, to body language, to the quiet patients who came in alone, to the ones who whispered, It's probably nothing, even while their breathing said otherwise. More than once, she caught a problem early because she refused to assume someone was exaggerating. More than once, a life tilted subtly towards safety because she chose to believe instead of dismiss. One evening, long after the initial incident had faded from hallway gossip, she saw Elijah again at the station. He walked with an easy, careful stride now, fully healed, but still carrying that gentle gravity that made rooms quieter when he entered. How's the initiative? He asked. Uncomfortable, she admitted. And good. I'm seeing things I didn't want to see. In myself. In others. But I'd rather see them than ignore them. He nodded. That's the work, he said. She hesitated. Do you still think about that night? He considered. Less than I used to, he said. But every time I do, I'm grateful one thing changed. What's that? She asked. You, he replied. She looked down, eyes stinging. I wish I had treated you right from the start, she said. I wish that for me too, he said softly. But maybe the next patient you care for is glad you didn't, because now you'll never overlook their pain again. She exhaled, a shaky breath that felt like the release of something old and heavy. He turned to go, then paused. Lauren, he said. Yes. Remember this, he said. Titles don't make people worthy of care. Humanity does. She nodded slowly. I won't forget, she said. And she didn't. From that day on, every time someone walked through those doors clutching their side, limping, holding themselves, or speaking in a voice that trembled between downplaying and desperation, she remembered the man who had almost been just another missed call for help. She remembered how close she came to failing him completely. And she chose, again and again, to listen. Respect doesn't begin when you learn who someone is. It begins the moment they say, I'm in pain.
If this story touched your heart or made you think about how we treat each other, take a moment to subscribe. Your support helps us share more Black justice stories that inspire change, spark awareness, and remind the world what dignity truly looks like. Share and leave a comment. Your voice helps bring these stories to life and keeps the message alive. Your voice matters here,